Hi, my name is Jared Bello, and this is Radical Self-Respect. But today, we have an episode of Everything Eccentric, and I have my guest, Joseph Mitsch here. He's the co-host, of the Trauma Redefined Podcast, correct?
Trauma Redefined with Kat and Joe, and we are on the Mental Health News Radio Network.
Awesome stuff. And so I'm going to get into why I wanted to have Joe on the show in a minute here, but please do subscribe to my channel if you like videos about radical self-respect. I normally talk about relationships, dating, boundaries, being assertive, etc. And also check out my book, Radical Self-Respect, and the audiobook too. They're both available. So if you're into that kind of thing, please give it a check it out. Share my content with others who you think might find it valuable. So, but right into today's show. I wanted to have Joe on the show today because it was after the infamous now Prince Harry and Meghan Markle interview with Oprah, where I'm not the biggest Meghan Markle fan, as you may have guessed.
I gathered that. I did gather that.
And I've done other videos about her being very similar to Mary Todd Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln's wife. The similarities are uncanny. But I was making a lot of people angry because I was saying, I guess I wasn't taking it easy on her. And I thought that there's two different things. There's people that, they can be depressed, they can have suicidal idealizations, but to me, it doesn't exempt them from kind of being called out. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you said this, right? You said that you were concerned or upset that if other people that they knew, their family or friends, if they were to come out as being depressed or suicidal, that because people were being hard on Meghan, it would make them less likely to speak up and to say something.
Yeah, that was pretty much what, again, when we both watched that interview, you saw it from your perspective and I saw it from mine. And when I started seeing the backlash on social media in all directions, my first thought was, let's say I bash her. Let's say I tear her apart. Yeah. Let's say my friend is feeling exactly how she's feeling. And because of how I am going at her and my opinions on her, my friend may not be inclined to come to me for help because they need it. Because now I've already said, well, this is how I feel about this. She's wrong. I feel that just because she's a celebrity, the non-celebrities who are going through the same shit, may not then be so forthcoming with how they're feeling out of fear that my response towards Meghan is going to be my response towards them. Okay.
So I think it's important to distinguish, there's two different things going on there.
Oh, right? There's several different things going on.
So someone can be, I have complete understanding and empathy for people, compassion for people that have had suicidal idealizations, who have been depressed. And I try to make it so that I'll never judge them for that. Mm-hmm. I'll never look down on them or try to guilt and shame them for those things because they happen and I get them. Mm-hmm. But I guess it also doesn't mean that I'm going to let other things slide that have been going on. And Meghan in particular, she's done some things I'm not very happy with. So, and I think this is something that happens though, and you identify as BPD. And this is something I've called Meghan Markle. Yes. I've called her BPD or with maybe comorbid narcissism. And I'm no clinical psychologist, but I'm not here to diagnose anybody. But I do see traits, I do see patterns, and I think sometimes labels can be useful. And so people I think were also mad that I was calling her BPD as well. Mm-hmm. And I think maybe they were thinking I was using that as a slanderous term. And I get it, I've had BPD traits myself as well. And at the time, of all the lists that they have, 7 or 8 or 9?
Yeah, there's a few.
I've had them all before.
And that's the thing. On any given day, any different moment, any different situation, I think we all could be identified with those traits. Yeah. But I think it is very commendable for people to come out and talk about it and discuss it. But like you said, when you do that, when you put yourself on that platform, okay, and are honest about it, you're going to get backlash, you're going to get criticism, because not everyone's going to be able to identify with what you're saying or how you're feeling.
So to a point even, we were commenting on a Facebook thread together, and people were getting really mad at me. And to a point, I'm not even really sure I understand. I didn't get a chance to get this far with it, but I'm not even sure why they were so angry. But do you have an idea why they were so angry?
Honestly, no, because I mean, I tune out, but not specifically. But again, if you take a stance as this is how I'm feeling about something, and somebody disagrees with that stance, then I mean, we just talked about it before we went on the air. That's social media today. If you're looking to go at somebody for a difference of opinion, it's right there.
Right.
And part of the problem, and we also discussed, is people have a hard time identifying these traits in themselves. So when you point them out in other people, and I think they instantly get defensive, right? Like, oh, he's talking directly about me. And that's, but I get that. I understand that. There's a lot of things that I take personal that people say, but at the same time, unless they're talking directly to me
right.
and saying you, then I take it with a grain of salt.
I mean, people, whatever they say and whatever they do, doesn't really have anything to do with us.
No,
anyway.
Not at all.
We've just hit on this one particular individual I'm thinking of. I just hit on his pain point in him, and it triggered something in him, and then that's it. Since I've had these traits too, I'm a big accountability person. I'm a big take care of my side of the street person, and if I know I've done poorly, I need to try to do better. And just because I have a disorder, I've had traits of a disorder, or I'm depressed or whatever, it's like that's not an excuse. And on my other videos on my channel, that's what I think a lot of people have said. They'd say, I have BPD and I can't control my disorder. And so anything you say to hold me accountable, you're really just blaming the victim. You're blaming someone who can't control their disorder.
It's a convenient justification. I don't want to use the word excuse. Everyone's different. I mean, yes, I went to rehab in 2013 for drug and alcohol abuse. When I was there, I was diagnosed bipolar, I was diagnosed major depression, I was diagnosed with some sort of blackout rage disorder. I had a whole list. And I remember I came home and I got one of those, I call them the grandma pill boxes, the ones for each day of the week. And I'm sitting there filling this up and I'm like, oh my God, I took drugs and drank all these years and now I have to take all these drugs to get better. And I started crying. I'll never forget that. And, that's kind of when I got into reading more and changing my diet more. But nothing happened overnight.
Right.
Okay? And I'm also, I'm very vocal about the fact that I was molested as a child. We've talked about that before. That was something that I didn't even touch on when I was in rehab. I didn't even bring that up because I still wanted to hide that. I wasn't able to talk about that. Different people at different points in their lives come to different realizations. And I think for me, it was chipping away at one thing or another, but nothing happened overnight. For me, it was a very slow process.
Sure.
So there were some days where something you would say would really offend me, and other days I'd be like, dude, you're 100% right. It depends on where I am at that point in time in my life and what I'm willing to accept.
I guess that's something sometimes I can forget, is that I've been in a self-help world for more than a decade, really, where I've started that self-awareness thing. I've gone through the 12 steps, and I think part of that accountability piece is huge in helping us to get better. And that's one of the biggest reasons why I focus on it, because if we can't admit we're wrong, if we can't admit when we've stepped out of line, it's going to be really difficult for us to improve. We really need to acknowledge what we've done wrong and what our mistakes are and what the avenues are to get better. And I get it, a lot of people have a really tough time with that, or they think they're okay with that, but then when the time comes to actually be held accountable, they don't really like it very much. And you mentioned the trauma thing. I shouldn't say trauma thing, because everyone's been through some sort of trauma.
Everyone, and that's actually why we came up with the name, Trauma Redefined, because so many people have experienced different types of trauma and not even realized that it's trauma.
I'm reading the holistic psychologist book right now, How to Do the Work, and she mentions the same thing. And it's a smart, intelligent book about how we show up in our day-to-day lives, how trauma, our patterns from our parents that they taught us. And so especially with things like molestation, a lot of people I know who have personality disorders, that's where a lot of them have started.
Yes.
There's a girl I knew that had BPD. She doesn't know for sure even, but when she was 12 years old, something happened with a family member, and she's like dissociated from that event. And ever since, she's come in and out of dissociation. It's scary.
It's funny you say that, and scary at the same time, because I, to this day, I'm 44. I wasn't able to say this out loud. I got clean when I was 36 from drugs and alcohol. I think the first time I ever said it out loud, I was 39.
Right.
Okay, so it took me a while just to be able to say. But now the more I talk about it, obviously the easier it is for me. I don't break down as much. I'm not as emotional about it. But I remember more, which is good some days and very bad other days, depending on where I am mentally. Because if something clicks in my head and I'm like, oh, that happened, or if I get a vivid memory of it, like I feel like a shock throughout my whole body, like, wow. Then there are days it happens and I'm like, oh, that explains this. And this. So again, it's where, for me, it's where I am mentally at that point in time. Good days, bad days. Good situations, bad situations. So you're not going to make everybody happy all the time.
Right.
All right? And that's what I've learned. And that's actually why I got out of the recovery field, to be honest with you. I worked in the recovery field for years after I got clean, because I thought I got clean, unqualified. The truth is, and I'll tell you this, I was never qualified to work in the field of recovery. Just because I got clean off of drugs and alcohol did not mean that I belonged in that field. Okay, from day one, I felt like an out-of-place peg. I'm not a 12-step guy. We talked about that. I tried it. I did it. I did the meetings for 2 years. I never felt like I belonged there. So a lot of my beliefs did not line up with the beliefs of the rooms. So I felt like I was doing an injustice to people who were coming in who needed the rooms. And because I didn't believe necessarily in that treatment for me, it was just, it wasn't a good fit.
Well, I think part of that, not feeling a part of, not belonging, that's a BPD trait right there.
Oh, absolutely.
Looking in,
absolutely. Absolutely.
That's why I say it's very important for borderlines to be a part of a group and make sure they're not on the outside looking in. And I get that. I'm that way still. I'm that way with a lot of things, where it's like more of a lone wolf kind of thing. But the way you were talking about trauma there, I've been thinking a lot about trauma and what does healing from trauma even look like? And this is I'll tell you my thoughts on it first, and I'll let you expand on your thoughts. But to me, it's like everyone's degree to which they can heal is very different.
Oh, absolutely.
And so some people, and this is, I don't want to call it cynical, but it might just be more reality, where it's like some people have a capability to really get a lot better and to be like almost as completely healthy as you can be, mentally, spiritually, physically, emotionally, etc. Other people, they're able to get there a little bit, but they'll still have spells and fall backwards. And then other people, it just seems like whatever they do, nothing helps.
Yes.
And to me, like I listen a lot to Sam Harris and his free will thoughts. He doesn't think we have free will. And so what he would call this situation is, it's really just luck, how much you can heal.
I don't know if luck's the right word. I would disagree with that, but again, I'm only disagreeing with that from my point of view. Out of what you just named, I think I fall in the middle, where sometimes I'm okay and sometimes I'm not. Sometimes 24 hours isn't enough time for me in the day to get everything done, and then there are days where I just want to spend 24 hours under the blankets and not move. So again, you can't sit there and tell somebody what they should do or what they could be doing or what they're doing wrong if it's not you. And that's why I have the issues with everything with social media today. It's like everybody's like, you got to do this, you're wrong, you're right, but you're not living in that person's shoes. And it's very easy for me to tell people how I stayed clean. For example, from drugs and alcohol. It's very easy for me to talk to people about how I deal every day with my trauma and my childhood, but that's me, okay? I can't, look, if I had 3 suicide attempts. I had 3 unsuccessful suicide attempts while I was still using, okay? For somebody else who had suicide attempts, we can discuss it. We can talk about how we got through it. But my reasons for attempting it and that individual's reasons may be completely different.
Right.
Our reasons for being, you can only go so far explaining to people or talking to people or, connecting with people on some level. But the bottom line is it's still the individual and how they deal with things and how emotional they are and how detached they are and how much damage was actually done to them mentally. Because you got to remember something. When I was a child, okay, when this happened, and this happened until I was 12 years old, at the time it was happening, I didn't even have the vocabulary to explain to somebody, even if I wanted to. Even if I went to the cops or a doctor or my mom and said, listen, this is what's happening, I didn't even know what was happening. So now you're having these traumatic events happening to you. You have no idea what's going on or how you're feeling. That causes insurmountable damage that you can't just say one day, like, I feel I have a good grip on it now. I feel today I talk about it. I'm open about it. I talk to other guys who have been through it. And I feel that I'm helpful in the sense where I'm honest about it. This is what happened. I'm not hiding it. I'm not pretending. I'm not afraid of being judged by it. But at the same time, I can't tell anybody how to deal with it or I can't lessen anybody's pain other than just saying, hey, it happened to me. You're not alone. And just talk. It was a freedom for me to be able to open up and talk about it. And that's really all I can do. All right.
Do you see where do you see like medicines and or supplements in the healing routine? Because I think that's another thing I think about a lot, which is because someone does medicines like prescription medication or supplements, does that mean they're trying to short circuit the healing process? Should they be able to do it without it? It's actually something I think about a lot, actually.
I think about it more because if you would have asked me that question, let's say 3 years ago, I would have 100% been like, absolutely not, no drugs. Let's do it all like with.
I used to be that way.
Yeah, and I'm not that way anymore. And I'll tell you what really changed my mind about that. A few years ago, I was diagnosed with hypothyroidism. Okay, now hypothyroidism, I learned I didn't know anything about it. It affects, depression. A lot of the characteristics I had when I was using, I could attribute to a thyroid being out of whack. Now, is that my excuse? Absolutely not. But I'm saying, like, if I was depressed, my thyroid being out of whack could have made me more depressed.
Sure.
All right? So then I started taking my thyroid medicine. And I got better. Cognitively, I was there more. I was in better moods. Now, does that fluctuate? Sure. And then I go in for blood work and I get my meds readjusted, and then it's a work in progress. So to answer your question, again, prior to I would have said absolutely not. Now, I'm no judge and jury at all. I feel that if do I think everybody should just run out and get medicated? No. Do I think everybody should be anti-medication? No. I think everybody needs to learn themselves. You need to learn your strengths, your weaknesses, and if you need medication to survive, especially in today's society, I say take it.
I'm big into natural stuff, right?
Yes.
I don't take any prescription drugs or anything, although I don't judge or shame someone who does.
No.
Whatever helps them, I think, is what's best for them. But I also think there's something to be said about the Earth, the planet, has a lot of what we need.
I
we've
agree.
been given that via the universe, whatever you want to say is created the universe. It's there. It's there to be taken. And so I prefer those things. And even things like Kratom, for example, they've really helped a lot of BPD traits for me.
Yes.
And so, like, a lot of the things that happens in BPD, like impulsivity, like acting out of nowhere, the extreme black and white thinking, splitting, lack of object constancy, between my supplement routine, of which Kratom is a part, it's tamed those down. I wouldn't say they're 100% gone, but it's certainly night and day different. It's night and day different than it was before.
And see, let's get honest here. You told me about Kratom, and I tried it, and I hated it. It did not work for me. It made me sick. I told you about that. But now, what do you feel Or what's your stance on everybody now seeing this and being like, oh, well, these two aren't clean because they took kratom? Because that's one of my biggest problems.
Oh, I don't care.
Yeah, I could care less. That's why I'm not.
I would agree with them. I would say, yeah, I wouldn't say I'm clean, but that's not the metric by which I live by anymore.
And that I think is key, because I'm no longer waking up, with a handle every morning. I'm no longer injecting myself. Right. I'm no longer snorting. I'm no longer popping pills. I tried kratom. I didn't like it.
Yeah.
All right. It works for you. So right here is a prime example of two different people dealing with situations differently, but we're still working through our own course, our own life. The problem I feel in society is too much judgment is passed on people like you and I, who do what they do in the best interest of them, and not so much worry about what society...
Well, I think those people don't realize that everyone's different. Everyone has a different biology and set of neurotransmitters that respond to different things. Everyone has a different environment. Mm-hmm. And those two things, that's a lot of who we become.
Sure.
What are our genes? What is our environment?
Absolutely.
And a lot of those things determine to me, like, how well someone can become after their trauma. Like, oh, if they had the right combination of two, maybe they're the person that can get better. Completely.
Absolutely.
If you lost the lottery in an environment and upbringings and genes, because guess what? We don't pick our environment.
No.
We don't pick our genes.
No, we do not.
And some people lose. They lose, and life's a struggle for them. Mm-hmm. And it just is. And so to me, it's important. The free will thing makes it so that I'm extremely grateful that I've gotten some sort of solutions or reprieve from my madness. Mm-hmm. Am I cured? Absolutely not cured, but I've gotten enough so that I can live in a day-to-day where people probably wouldn't think something was too wrong with me.
Right.
Which is an improvement.
Which should be the goal for everybody.
And so it helps. I'm able to adapt to the world. Now, there's a whole different question to be said about how healthy are you really adapting to a sick world. We'll leave
that's a whole different show.
Yeah, it's a whole different show.
It's a whole different show.
So I'm grateful for where I am with it. And I think what happens to people that are really judgmental, they're trying to relieve their internal struggle with shame by judging and looking down on others. That's one thing they're doing. And they get married to their ideas.
Yes.
They're married to their method. But they just don't realize that everyone's different. Everyone's had different experiences. People have different levels of trauma. They have different hormone balances, different neurotransmitter balances. And I'm for an individual approach to each individual person.
Yes.
I don't try to do the one size fits all. To me, that's been proving to not work that well.
I haven't seen great success in it, but and I think there, I don't like using the word fear, but I think there's a lot of not trusting yourself. So okay, I have to do what they tell me. I know, banging on the table. We had that problem during one of our...
That was only a problem with the microphone.
With the microphone,
so
right.
We're good now.
I think that so many people, and myself included, I was so afraid to make a decision for myself without approval because I had a track record of failure.
Right.
I ended up in rehab. I had all these issues. I can't deal with life. I'm depressed all the time. All I do is cry because everything I did brought me here. So I need you, and you to help me, to make the right decisions because I can't make any of the right decisions. And it got to a point for me, again, another topic, but I'll say it. When I first got out of rehab and did the rooms and everything, my biggest defining moment was when I decided I wasn't sick anymore. Okay? And that was my mentality. I don't want to be sick. I don't want to have a disease, so I don't. And for me, that's when it clicked. Like, I don't need this to stay clean. I don't need this. I don't need this. I need this. I need to trust myself.
I agree
again. Okay? And that for me got to be a problem when I would do lectures and talk and speak, because I felt like I was trying to convey that message but hide it at the same time, because I just didn't want to come out and say like, hey, trust yourself, but I also didn't want to come out and say like, you need to go to meetings. So I kind of found myself at a crossroad where I didn't feel I was helping and I felt like I was lying. So I felt like it was time for me to just get out of the field.
Okay. I can see that. I mean, there comes a point, and there came a very similar point for me where
Okay.
you do the work, you go through some steps, and then you come to think for yourself
Yes.
as opposed to the group think.
Yes.
I would say something like an AA and NA is overwhelmingly positive, but there are a couple things that are not too good. The one about like needing the others and being taught that your best decisions brought you here. And so it teaches you to not trust your decisions, that you need to bounce it off of other people to get that trust. I don't like that part. I don't like the people who say they're so sick all the time. And the more we say things like that, the more it becomes true.
Right.
And then the other part about it is, and it's miraculous it works as well as it does, considering this final point I'm about to say. But when you bring people together of all different ilks, all different kinds of addicts, personality disorders, mood disorders, all different sorts of trauma, we become like the people we spend time with.
Yes.
And so that's why I say it's miraculous that all those people can come together, and people can get better. But we got to be very vigilant with who we actually decide to really spend time with. And like, not everyone's going to, like, some people when they're first getting clean, right, or getting sober, whatever you want to call it, they just have to adhere completely to the big book or NA because they don't trust anything else.
Absolutely.
And this is what they don't want to talk about, but there comes a point where if you're thinking for yourself, truly thinking for yourself, you're not going to blindly agree with everything that's said in the big book or NA or what other people say. And that's a defining point.
Yes.
What happens after that point?
And that's, we've talked about, I think there's different stages of recovery. And I think early on in recovery, it's vital. I really do. I think detox is essential. I think, just going to meetings, and even regardless of the meeting, and just listening to other people, just to realize, I'm not alone. Other people are going through this too. And I'm not a terrible person. I'm not alone in this world.
Right.
But I also believe there's a graduation, and you have to be able to look at yourself. And that's, I use the word willpower all the time, and that word's very taboo. People don't like people, and I've gotten into discussions with people, like you just said, all my decisions are wrong. I can't do anything right, and it's frustrating. Right. And, it's like, you got to take your life back at some point, to the best of your ability. Do the rooms help? Absolutely. I've been to great meetings. I've been to terrible meetings, and again, I think a lot of that has to do with, my mindset walking into the room.
Right. I don't think the rooms have hurt too many people.
No.
I think they've helped way more people than they've hurt.
They've definitely helped more people than they've hurt. Absolutely.
And I think the element of CPT and self-awareness, like the steps can give you, I think that really helps a lot of people that have personality disorders. It's like gives them that, not quite professional therapy, of course, but it gives them like a substitute for that. And so for people that have BPD, people that have NPD, I think it does really help them. Yeah, well, it gives them the awareness.
It gives them the awareness.
The ability to take a step back as opposed to just blurting out the first thing that comes to their mind and doing the first thing that comes to their mind. That's extremely important.
Absolutely.
And that's why my message is I want to empower people and I want to ally with the side of someone. And this is where I get a big point of contention with the BPD folks in particular. It's, I want to side with the side of you that wants the best for yourself. Because though you can't tell me I'm wrong about this, because if someone who has BPD, and I've had it, I've had all those traits, it's like I know there's a big part of me that did not want what was best for me.
Yes.
And that part might speak out and say any number of things to avoid accountability, to be able to go off into Never Never Land and go off on a binge and to go off, or fill in the blank with whatever avoidant or escapism activity. And it's like, I'm not here to side with that side of the person, because I know that side probably wants what's worst for themselves. I want to side with the side that wants the best for themselves and lead that part of him or her out.
You're absolutely
lead them forward.
You're absolutely correct. But what I will say to that is, and this, is that side is this, despite the pain and the anguish that's over there, if you live on that side long enough, it becomes your comfort zone. So it's very easy to run back to that side when things get tough.
Well, two things. I don't ever want to gaslight someone into thinking that I'm not acknowledging that side. I admit it's there, and to varying degrees in individual people, but I admit it's there. I don't want to deny its existence because I think it's important to acknowledge it. But like you said, I think people become addicted
Absolutely.
to that side. Like that's their story about themselves is, I'm the person with suicidal idealizations. I'm the person that's depressed. I'm the person that has tumultuous relationships. And that's, who are they?
Right.
If not for that story.
Right.
And they get addicted to that. It's their comfort zone. And like simple tenets of even things like NA. That's what leads people out. It's, you got to get uncomfortable to get comfortable. A simple tenet, but it's very true.
I agree with that.
And
absolutely.
That's what I think people are very hesitant, and not unsurprisingly, but they're very hesitant to get uncomfortable. They're very hesitant to try something different.
Of course.
And that's what keeps people stuck there.
And you're 100% right. But I can tell you from my point of view, somebody who, and we've talked privately, I have been horribly depressed over the past year. I have not been myself. I've not put any material out on social media. I've been very quiet. Actually, you being here today, was something that I was nervous about an hour before you came. I was like, I don't know if I want to do this. I don't know if I'm ready for this. But I wanted to challenge myself to do something like this because I have been in a rut, and it has been very hard for me to take those necessary. I know how to do it, and I think that's my biggest problem as an individual is I see myself being complacent. I see myself not taking the steps I need to better myself, but at the same time, in my head, I think I'm smart enough to say, I can do it anytime I want because I've done it before. And that keeps me back here, like, I can always do it tomorrow. I can always do it tomorrow. So that's
complacency.
Absolutely. And complacency for me is the absolute worst thing possible because I'm just stagnant.
Well, I'll tell you what happens to me. I'm very driven and hungry.
Yes.
Not always for the best of things, mind you. I can be very money-oriented, for example, where like that's a carrot that I really work hard to build myself up to get to that because I know money is not everything, but I can't deny either that like how much money we have and how we make it determines how we spend the majority of our lives.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I can have a really hard time. This is where my lack of object consciousness comes into play, where it's like I want to get to that financial freedom point so that I don't need to think about that question anymore. Whereas I'll just be able to do whatever I want, which doesn't mean I'm not going to work. I'll just be able to do the work that I want to do. And so I'm slightly obsessed with that. But it gets me going. And probably some of my shame from the past. My parents were very hard on me, my dad in particular. And so like when I'm doing nothing, I get like a lot of guilt.
Yeah,
And I eat myself up. But that guilt though, it's like nothing's all bad or all good. Like I use it to propel me forward. And I think a lot of really successful people in the world, they're just dealing with their traumas. They're just upset and trying to escape some sort of bad feeling. But they've done great for the world because of it. And that's another thing I think people, when they just accept where they are, like, okay, you know what? I know I'm not 100% healthy. I know I have some perhaps unhealthy coping mechanisms that are pushing me forward. But hey, it just is what it is right now.
And it is what it is right now because I like to say I may not be thriving, but I'm surviving. Yeah. So at this moment, I may not be taking the steps that I necessarily want to take or wish I was taking, but I'm not going backwards. I'm surviving right now. I'm going through, these past few months of depression. I think COVID has really affected me. I think this pandemic has really done a number on a lot of people. For me, I'll be honest with you, one of the biggest things for me is one of the reasons I've been so quiet on social media is because I see all the hate and animosity and the attacking people on social media, and that really bothers me. It really does, and I don't want to be a part of it. And it literally, like I was telling you earlier, like if I post something and somebody comes at me, like for the first time in my life, I'm like, oh my God, I'm like sensitive to that. And that's never been me before. So I feel that everything out there right now, it's just this black cloud that, well, I mean, I can only speak for myself, but I'm working through it, but I can only imagine other people are going through it as well.
Well, I mean, part of it's just the acceptance thing, right? You accept that, hey, don't beat yourself up too much, it just is what it is. And as far as like the social media thing, I would say is like, hey, I've tried to make a distinguished effort to not try to convince people I'm right anymore. And that's where a lot of my social media disagreements would come from, if I was really being honest. It was, deep down, it's like I wanted to prove I was right or to get someone to agree I was right. And I've kind of just given up that a little bit. I'm like, you know what?
Yeah.
People just aren't going to agree, and that's really it. And the sensitivity to criticism thing, that's a BPD thing. That's an MPD thing.
But it's a new one for me, and that's what I'm telling you. Like,
at least you're not gaslighting people over it.
No, I'm not
that's what a lot of
gaslighting.
MPD people do.
But I never cared about it before. Now all of a sudden, it's like I'm more sensitive towards other people than I ever have been before.
Maybe as you get more like sensitive of spirit or more, I don't know, clean. I don't know.
I don't know what it is.
It wasn't that way before, though?
No, I could care less. Yeah. But I kind of look at it as growing, because I don't care what you feel in life, okay? And I learned this personally. As long as I feel something, it means I'm alive. If I feel pain, if I feel happiness, if I feel whatever I'm feeling, as long as something gives me a reaction, it means something's working inside of me. So it's almost like I need to figure it out. But since it's a new trait, since it's something that hadn't happened to me before, maybe I'm evolving. Maybe I'm going in a different direction. I haven't figured it out yet.
Well,
but
there's an opportunity in everything.
Absolutely.
So whatever the opportunity is for you to decide. But I know one person, he was telling me before, Jared, feelings are not a good indicator of how we're doing. Feelings are not fact. And to which I think I do agree with those things, because I could be feeling great, but really acting out. And like getting a rush from being bad.
Oh,
and then vice versa, I could be feeling like trash, but I'm doing the right things. I'm trying to like really better myself, get uncomfortable to get comfortable kind of thing. So like the feelings come and go. It just, again, I try not to beat myself up too much for the feelings of things. And I've been the sensitive criticism guy too, but lately not as much, because I've had to learn, it's like, you know what? I do my YouTube. I put myself out there.
You do.
To be shot at.
You do.
People are going to do it. People are going to do that. And a couple things I find solace in. It's like, well, people generally only hate on people that they think are above them, or better than them, or jealous of. And I think those things are all true. And to me, it's like, sometimes the haters, they'll tell me the things that maybe people in my life should be telling me sometimes. Like, they're afraid to say. And so I listen to it, and it's not my favorite thing to see or read. And I mean, more recently, the last few weeks, I got a bunch. I've upset the BPD crowd, I know. And they say they're calling me BPD, they're saying all these things. And it's like, well, you wouldn't like it if I did that to you, and here you are doing it to me.
Right.
But I get it. I don't want there to be BPD stigma. But I also don't think that, like, I gotta be honest to people about, like, if you're gonna get in a relationship with a BPD type woman, there's gonna be consequences. There's gonna be, like, you'd think, oh no, it's fine, I know the disorder, I know what it's like, but it's like, no, once you're in it, something happens. And it just doesn't turn out the way you think it will.
No, that's 100%. It rarely turns out the way an individual thinks it will.
And they just gotta be prepared, though. They gotta know, like, this is most likely what will happen. I mean, and I get it. Anyone can learn from their own mistakes, but it takes a wise person to learn from someone else's mistakes. Absolutely.
It's just very difficult, because like anything else, when you hear anything on social media, when you read something, your reaction to it is based on your experiences in life. So if you say something that hits a nerve, instantly it's like, oh, well, he's talking about me, or I need to defend this because this is what I'm going through. And people are sensitive to it. But I will say I'm no expert in relationships at all. Don't claim to be. Why I'm single. But if you don't deal with your own issues, I've learned that you carry them from relationship to relationship.
Sure.
So it's like you're even though there's a new face and a new situation, you got all this backed up anger that you never acknowledge, you never work through, and now you're taking it out on this person who had no idea what they signed up for.
Sure.
So
I mean, a lot of people recreating the relationships with their parents, or there's doing the same old patterns where codependents will get with narcissists,
yes,
or borderline will get with narcissists, and it's just the same old things over and over.
Yep.
And until people do something different, the same things will continue.
But again, staying in that comfort zone, even though it's not safe, even though it's a bad place to be, you don't want to leave that comfort zone.
Yeah, I mean, I've done that for sure. I've gotten with women that I knew were borderline or comorbid narcissistic types. And I thought, I'm friends with them, so it might go different this time.
Mm-hmm.
But it didn't. All the same things would happen. And the cluster B pathology was a cluster B pathology where they love you 1 minute, and then the next minute, boom, they split, and the energy is completely different. And like as a guy, it's like we can't control that. It's like you can't control what that other woman, her energy is going to be. You can't control how she's processing her trauma and what kind of past nonsense she's kind of reliving. And so that's what people got to accept.
Yes, and on the flip side to that, as a male who has had trauma that I didn't deal with for years,
Sure.
I found that I would get into, those relationships and everything you just described, the snapping, the taking it, that was me. I would do that.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult to put blame on yourself. But I think for me, I made the decision to be single. I'm clean, I'm sober, I'm not suicidal anymore, but at the same time, I don't know how good I'm going to be in a relationship right now. I just told you I've been dealing with my own version of depression over the past couple months. I don't want to bring anybody into that anymore.
Well, that's intelligence, emotional intelligence or emotional maturity. A lot of people don't have that.
Well, I don't want to hurt anybody anymore, and that's something.
That's the awareness.
That's something I've learned, and that's, believe it or not, it's relatively new for me because everything I just described about carrying one relationship to the next relationship, I did that.
Sure.
So I'm very familiar with that. Until you hurt somebody that you really love,
Right.
And then it wakes you up, and you're like, oh my God. And for me right now, it's good to have people in my life. Male friends, female friends, and keep that safe distance to where I'm not going to hurt, destroy, or damage them.
Right.
All right? So that's, learning experience. I'm 44. It only took a few.
There's a fine line between what they say, like all is fair in love and war, where people's feelings change. People's feelings change.
Absolutely.
But I think that's true, except on on steroids level. With personality disorder type folks.
Yeah,
people's feelings change, but it's like they change boom.
Mm-hmm.
Like super, and it ends up hurting people. And part of it is you can't say much sometimes because all is fair in love and war. People are allowed to feel differently at different times,
Mm-hmm.
and it is what it is. But as the person, if you're on the receiving end of it, it's then it's our duty, if we see the red flags, if we see the trouble signs,
Mm-hmm.
to not go in, right? And I give you a lot of credit if you're the person who's done that to others. It's you're doing the right thing by not being in a relationship right now. If you know that's what's going to happen, if you're in a relationship.
I'm not saying I know it's going to happen because I feel I'm not 100% where I need or want to be in life.
Well, that's
right
what's
now.
more important.
Right, exactly.
When we're at our best, that's when we attract the best people to us.
Exactly.
To me, that's always true.
I agree with that.
And I'm learning for me right now, I like being single better because I'm the type of person where when I start to care, it's a painful feeling to care. It gets wrapped up in a little codependency, it gets wrapped up in a couple other things, and it's not fun. And part of it's my fault for caring about the wrong people who are not going to be safe, who are emotionally unavailable, and that's my pattern to do that, caring about people who are emotionally unavailable.
But it's tough too because it's not like you meet somebody and you hand a checkbook out and say, "Are you this, what?"
No.
And there is that getting to know people and getting comfortable with people. So dude, relationships are tough now. They're tough, and a good one is a dime a dozen. So if you have one, then God bless you.
Well, marriage and long-term relationships to me at this point, they're pretty much out of the question. I think from this point, I'm 36,
Okay.
you're 44. I really just want to I'll date and I'll have some fun. But as far as anything else goes, some woman's really going to have to blow me out of the water. And I'm going to have to be this girl's the unicorn, the one that's not all the rest of them. Because right now it's really hard for both sexes, really.
Oh, absolutely.
It's really difficult, and I don't think we're living in an era that's really conducive to monogamy anymore. We're living in an era where attention is so freely given and you're so easy to meet new people where it's nuts.
Well, I mean, you look at it, back in the day in our parents' generation or our grandparents, you work through situations, you work through problems. Like divorce was not an option. Now it's like you get in one fight and it's over and you move on to the next. And honestly, I don't want that anymore. I don't want, like you said, you date, like the long-term relationship though is something down the road. I don't even want to date. Like I'm either with my daughter, and taking her to work or taking her to the farm, or I'm home alone. And
that helps though. It helps having children. I think it gives you something
I think so.
to focus on.
I think so.
To try to help.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess everyone has a different parenting style, right? But it's like, I would think one of the best things to do for our daughter is just to model what a healthy person is, right? Try to be the best version of yourself you can. And
I'll tell you, my daughter's 14 and she has seen both healthy and unhealthy version of me. So, it's I don't like I don't think I've done damage to her, but I've definitely showed her good and bad. So
I'd say on the bright side of something like that, she'll know what to look out for.
I tell her all the time,
people that are doing certain things. Well, my dad used to be like that, and I wasn't very good when he was
right.
doing it.
Don't date anybody like your father.
But once they get to certain points, and what does this come back to? It comes back to how much can someone truly heal?
Yes.
Now, I want to make a video about it sometime soon, where it's like, I think some people are more capable than others.
Yes.
Some people's healing will look way different than other people's healing, but that's the other part where even though I think some people just might not be capable, you don't know which person you are until you try. Like, you may as well try to go all out to heal and act as if you can, because what's the worst that could happen if you do?
Nothing. Just breaking that comfort zone is the hardest part.
Right. So you act as if you could be the person that gets much better and has completely healthy relationships and a good sense of self and is very assertive, etc. Try to be that person. I fully acknowledge I don't think everyone's capable of being that person.
No, I agree.
Whether they tried 1,000% or not. But what do we have to lose? To try.
Right.
And so I don't like the people that... When people say their disorder's bigger than them, they're more powerful than them, I don't like that because it's not empowering to me. That's like just putting yourself in the defensive, like, powerless posture.
And I get what you're saying, and this brings us back because it's still you want them to believe in themselves more than they do.
Yeah.
But if they can't at that moment, then that's where the frustration comes out. Like, but I want you to get better, but I can't. So then it's actually, there's the conflict right there. And we can't love somebody more than they love themselves. And
there's nothing else to do.
There's nothing else. There's nothing else to do.
That's why I think it's important just to put that out there. But then on my side, it would be, don't get caught up if people don't agree. Like, if they just don't agree, then that's it. There's no use continuing the conversation, really.
Absolutely.
It's like, that's the end of it. Like, this is my thoughts. You can try to adhere and live to, like, what I'm saying, or you can stay or do what you've been doing. But granted, if what you've been doing hasn't been working too well for you, you might want to try something different.
Absolutely.
But that's as far as you got. That's as far as I'll go.
Right, and nobody wants to be called out on that. So, and that's where the problem.
But we're all in that situation to an extent.
To an extent.
Just the only variables are the area.
Absolutely.
What area are we feeling that way in?
Yep.
Because no one's perfect. Everyone has something they could be doing better, and so that's true for someone and anyone in any particular area. It's just a matter of what they're struggling with.
Yes. Well, I mean, real quick to wrap up, that was my problem with the recovery field. I couldn't love or care about anybody enough to get them clean. Right. And if they didn't believe in themselves or if they didn't want it the way I thought they should want it, you know what? We were just clashing, and it wasn't doing anybody any good. So, same principle, same concept.
Recovery field is tough right now. I think it's people doing some good work in there. But I also think there's a lot of people married to their own ideas, married to their own way, and I think that gets in the way.
I don't even know if we should start talking about the recovery field right now.
Well, we probably did our piece on BPD, so we could probably wrap this up. But in conclusion, I'll say about that recovery thing where I'm just for what's going to help people get better. I don't care if someone thinks math's something they can do to get better. I don't care if they're the person that used to do weed or meth and says, oh, I'll smoke weed and stuff. I don't care. Whatever's going to make your day-to-day life a little better, a little more functionable, a little more socially acceptable, etc. Where you're closer to a good version of yourself. You can show up in your life for your family, for your friends, for your job. Like, how are your results? That's really all I care about.
Well, I mean, I don't know what the exact verbiage is, but it is said in the rooms not to judge anybody else's recovery.
Yeah.
Yet, that's all anybody seems to do is judge what somebody else does. All right, and that's why I told you, I don't consider... I got clean in 2013 is when I went to rehab. I don't identify myself as an addict. I don't say I'm in recovery. I don't post my clean date. I don't want anything to do with any sort of judgment or looking. It has, dude, my recovery is my life. It's who I am. I didn't get clean to make everybody happy or say, hey, look at me. Look at the way I'm doing this. Is this right? No. And I'm sorry, like, we could do a whole nother show about Matt. We could do Suboxone, methadone, the whole California recovery. Like, dude, people need to stop pointing fingers and blaming everybody else and just focus on themselves. And that's what I believe we need to work on is self-empowering, which is what you do.
I can see that. I think people who are their mission is to help others. I think they get caught up on that part. They get caught up because they want to see everyone do so good, and they think, so this method works so good for me, so it should work so good for you too. And they get it's a controlling thing to an extent. And they're controlling.
They're not wrong. I think a lot of it has to do with presentation. I think that's a big part of it.
Well, the big thing is you said it earlier. We can't help anyone that doesn't want to help themselves.
Exactly.
That's my mantra with the whole addiction field. And it's one of the reasons I'm not there anymore, because you realize a lot of people who want to help them, they want to help them more than the individual wants to help themselves. Right. And that's where you say you got to just wash your hands, because at that point you're being codependent, or you're being enmeshed, or you're
enabling,
controlling.
Yeah.
And that's where I would draw the line.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we had a good talk here. Where can the audience find you?
Well, we are on the Mental Health News Radio Network. My Facebook page is Trauma Redefined with Kathleen and Joe. That's really it right now. I haven't gotten into the YouTube thing. I keep wanting to, but I'll talk to you.
I can help you about that. Well,
right.
Thanks very much for coming on the show today, man. Thanks everyone for watching. Please leave your thoughts below on any number of the things we talked about, and hope you enjoyed the show. Have a good one.